Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our fifth national debate on resilience in the water sector on bridging the skills gap. It's really fantastic to see so many people online, with more people joining all of the time. Before I hand over to our chair for this morning, Dr Samuela Guida from the International Water Association, I wanted to provide a short introduction to the debate, why this topic is important, and then how the debate will run and operate. Across the universities of Cranfield, Sheffield and Newcastle, we host an EPSRC funded Centre for Doctoral Training on Water Infrastructure and Resilience, also known as WIRE. This collaborative programme between industry and academia has trained nearly 60 PhD students over the last 5-6 years and is intending to train a further 60 students over the next 5 years, with the aim of producing highly qualified graduates with the skills in terms of technical management skills to make a real difference to the water sector. In making the case for the programme, we had to highlight the issues and challenges that the water sector is facing, understanding the complexity of some of those challenges and to really think about how we solve some of those challenges. And so for the last few years, we've brought together experts in the field on various important topics so we could really inform on the discussion and debate. So I'm very pleased to say that this year we're tackling another really important matter related to the sustainability and resilience of the water sector. And that's about, well, are we facing a real significant crisis in the sector with respect to a skills gap? When we made the case for the development of our PhD programme, we kind of had to look for reasons why we needed to have well-trained PhD students going on to careers in the sector and wider environmental engineering fields. And two things kind of were an emerging factor that came up again and again when we were speaking with industry experts. The first was that there's kind of some huge challenges that need to be addressed that will need skilled people. For example, the more than 6,000 wastewater assets that will need to be adapted to meet the challenge of becoming a net zero carbon sector, or the multi-billion pound investments that are going to be needed to control sewer discharges or to remove contaminants such as PFAS from drinking water and so on. And the other factor was around the risks associated with the workforce, linked to an ageing workforce, difficulties recruiting, bad publicity associated with the water industry, the requirement for new skills that haven't been required before, such as in AI and data and so on. And so that's kind of really driven the rationale behind the discussion today, to really answer some of those key questions around, is there such a big skills gap in the sector? If there is, what skills do we need and how do we then attract the talented people and individuals into those areas of water management? And also around what it is about those that come into the sector, what do they want from a career in the water industry? So we have a really great agenda this morning, talks from experts in the sector, followed by the discussion and debate itself. We've also included student voices and opinions throughout the morning, which is really important to us, including results from a small survey that we undertook from our student cohorts about what they perceive to be important on the matter of skills, training and expectations in their further employment. We do want to hear from you throughout the morning, so please do post your questions and discussions through the chat function on Zoom, and we'll be reminding you of that throughout the morning. But during the first talks, we're not going to have any question and answers. We're going to save that for the debate itself, okay? So please do post the questions in the chat and we'll be picking those up all of the time, okay? So without further ado, I would like to hand over to our conference chair for the morning, or our discussion chair for the morning, Dr Samuela Guida, who is the Strategic Programmes and Engagement Manager at the International Water Association, as well as being an alumnus of Cranfield, where she undertook her PhD. So in her role with the IWA, she manages the IWA strategic programmes, partnerships and communities, ensuring meaningful engagement across the sector. So Samuela is perfect for chairing this morning's debate. So Samuela, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter, and good morning, everyone. As Peter said, I'm Dr. Samuela Guida, and I am the Strategic Program and Engagement Manager at the International Water Association, or IWA. We are the largest membership organization in the water sector with over 10,000 members across 140 countries. I wanted to start this event by quoting, or rather paraphrasing, IWA Executive Director Dr. Kalava Ravamurthy, who always says that if climate change is a shark, each tooth of the shark is a water-related problem, meaning that we will feel the effect of climate change through water-related problems like flood, droughts, or even unfamiliar patterns in extreme events. If you add to these challenges like overpopulation and aging infrastructures, then you really have a problem. But it does not end there. As Peter said, we are living in a digital age with generative AI and new technologies like large language models, changing fundamentally how we work and requiring us to constantly adapt to new paradigms and rules. If that's not enough, we also have to consider that there has been a 21% reduction in the water treatment workforce from 2019 to 2021, and with nearly a quarter of the water workforce over 55 years old, so set to retire in the next 2 decades, we are also seeing fewer and fewer young people choosing to become water professionals. So we need solutions, and we need them now. At IWA, we invest in the next generation of the water leaders and bridge the gap between research and industry. Through initiatives like Young Water Professional Community, we foster mentorship, leadership development, and practical learning. We have specialist groups, programs, publications, and events which really bring together academia, utilities, government, technology provider to drive real-world applications. We have upcoming events like the Water and Development Congress in Bangkok this December and the 2026 World Water Congress in Glasgow in Scotland, which will serve as a platform from learning, collaboration and innovation, which, as we said, is absolutely critical. So I'm honored to co-moderate today's discussion. As Pete mentioned, I'm a proud Cranfield alumna, and I look forward to hearing insight from our keynote speakers and panelists. So I think we can dive right in. Our first speaker is Tomas Hotzel Escardo. Tom is a PhD student at Sheffield University and is going to present us the result of a questionnaire which collected replies from a variety of PhD students from Sheffield, Newcastle and Cranfield Uni. The questionnaire included questions about what students thought about employability in the water sector and skills. So Tom, over to you.
Hi, morning everyone.
Morning.
Yeah. So I made a survey about what students thought about the water sector and their future plans and employment to give them a voice in this debate. They're going to be the new employees of the water companies and the rest of the companies in the water sector as a whole. So it's pretty important. Yeah, I'm part of the CDT, so yeah, talk to a lot of these students every day. Yeah. So can I get the first slide, please? Yeah. Next slide again, sorry, please. So we got a total of 28 responses from a survey sent to about 100 people. And this isn't a bad turnout at all. As you can see, there's a good spread amongst the gender divisions, and we have kind of an expected age split where most of the respondents were between 25 and age 34. Importantly, we got a lot of detailed responses, so we're going to have some good results to present here. Next slide, please. So the perceptions of students on the current job market in the water sector tend to be positive. Many seemed a bit unsure about their career paths, but more than a third of respondents put water companies as at least one of their options. As yeah, they seem pretty positive about their chances on working in the water sector or a water company. Next slide, please. So importantly, do students actually think there is a skills gap? I myself wasn't massively aware of this. I guess maybe I'm a bit ignorant about that, but yeah, it seems that many students agree with me. As you can see, like a third of students thought they weren't aware of it at all, or the perception of a skills gap, I mean. More interestingly, the thoughts on why students thought there was a skills gap or wasn't, they're the more interesting results. So there was a big spread on this. Most of the responses were related to climate change and ecological problems, as you can see on the slide. Most students rated this, if they rated there being a skills gap in the water sector, rated it on average about 7 out of 10, 10 being the highest skills gap possible. I guess it's not an easy problem to be aware of if you're a student, so some of the responses were a bit unclear, but students who had worked in the water sector previously seem to have much more of an idea of where these skills gaps were, and this reflects in the thoughts on why they thought there was a skills gap. Next slide, please. So as a kind of continuation from that, students were a bit unsure about whether they were likely to work in the water sector, even if they wanted to continue. If they were sure they wanted to work in the water industry. There's a bit of a spread in the middle, but it tends to the upper end of the scale. There are a few more complicated reasons, which is why there were students in the know directly, and many, I guess, just don't know because they're still a few years off from finishing their PhDs or other research. Next slide, please. Sorry for the tiny writing, but this is the reasons why students aren't considering a job in the water sector. There's clearly this question wasn't, the answers weren't specific enough that we gave because most students filled out other, as you can see. But sadly, there was a kind of imposter syndrome in a lot of the students because many put, I don't think I'm qualified, and even in the free form answer put that they were a bit unsure about the direction or their qualifications in general. Some said they thought that those in the water sector faced pressure from the current reputation of many water companies. But then on the flip side, another said that they didn't want to work for the water sector because of the reputation of sewage, of CSOs and sewage spills of water companies. So there's a bit of a dynamic there. Low pay was a common theme. It's not directly on the graph there, but in many of the freeform responses, students were comparing pay from other sectors. So there's not the perception that pay is especially low, I guess. It's more the perception that pay is better in other industries. Next slide, please. So what's the motivations for students to work in the water sector from like a philosophical kind of standpoint? This is fairly evenly divided, as you can see. Natural progression and wanting to improve the water sector were like the two biggest slices, but then the next two are also pretty evenly split. So there's not too much to read from on this diagram. Next slide, please. But then if we look at the direct benefits that students would pick for working in the water sector or water company specifically, we get much more interesting results. I didn't actually expect to see this, but most students said that work-life balance was the most important to them, followed by more hands-on work and directly applicable research. So this is unexpected to me because of the amount of comments before on low pay and stuff like that. I thought this would come out on top on here, but clearly students value like a more fulfilling job and a better balance between their work and their home life more than the pay. It's just another consideration. Yeah, so I guess that's important for water companies to consider, or industry companies in the water sector in general when considering the skills gap. Next slide, please. And then directly to that, like what direct opposites are there for the students? What would make a student not want to work in a job in the water sector? And here the reputation of water companies comes up. Not many people directly commented on this, but with the amount of comments, I think it's a bit of a split. Some students feel a bit scared maybe that from hearing opinions of those who work in the water sector, and some just have like a moral viewpoint that they don't want to work for companies that are perceived so poorly in the public. And again, the pay comes up. But there were some other comments. I guess there was some visa restriction comments and more complicated personal stuff about like skills. Again, a bit of confusion or maybe uncertainty about what skills they might need to work in the water sector. Next slide, please. So what other sectors are students considering? Here's a nice pretty cloud, so with all the responses that we got. As you can see, academia and research are pretty big right in the middle, and there's a bunch of other ones in the background. Environmental seems to be a draw point. A lot of people mention environment or charities. There's a bunch. There's a massive mix at the back. And a lot related to water, as you can see, hydrology, geotechnics. There's some civil engineering somewhere. There's a big variety, so students don't. There's a lot of different skills that we have, is what I mean. Next slide, please. Here you can see again like why students said students just said they were going to work they wanted to work in research or continue in academia, and it's the biggest response. And then the rest is a bit more of a spread. It's kind of expected if you look at the word cloud that we just saw. Yeah, interesting. No students said other, so there is a bit of certainty about what students think their skills are and what they're interested in. Next slide, please. Yeah, so do students actually think they have the necessary skills? This was an overwhelming yes. It was easy. I think like 1 or 2 people said they were unsure, but there were no no's. Everything was yes. People were pretty confident. They said that they're pretty happy with the skills they've gained from working with industry while they've been a student. From the CDTs, a lot of people mentioned wire specifically. Yeah, pretty confident. Nothing that made people unsure compared to the other answers we saw where people were like, oh, I don't really know where I'm going to work. So there's some positives there. And when we then ask students what skills they thought they didn't have, this was even more obvious that they're pretty happy, because we mostly got two responses, which is policy and regulation and machine learning and AI. And I'm not really sure you can read into these because these are pretty topical and in the news quite a lot. So it's more of, I think these would change if you asked them in a different year when there's different technologies in the news. Yeah. Next slide, please. This was a pretty divided question for the students that we asked. Promotion seems to be, some students thought, yeah, there's enough promotion, and then others were complained about the lack of visibility of water companies and consultancies in the water sector at job fairs at universities. I guess it's pretty difficult to have like a water specific jobs fair, which some students commented on. So yeah, I think it depends whether you worked with an industrial partner as well. I guess it gave you more visibility and your groups in general at a university. So maybe there's some work to be done there. Next slide, please. So overall, I think the survey showed that students are pretty confident about their skills, mostly. A bit unsure about their trajectory, like in terms of their career, but that's pretty to be expected because a lot of students just won't be applying to jobs or ongoing research roles until the end of their PhD. So yeah, they're optimistic on their job outlooks. There wasn't any negativity around working in the water sector in terms of the companies themselves. Well, there was a little bit, but for the most part, they were pretty neutral or positive. And many do want to continue working on into the water sector or adjacent sectors. Yeah, there are a variety of motivations, and students are mostly not divided on like their benefits. Yeah, students were motivated by a lot of things, and it wasn't just pay. There was like a lot of people wanted to continue doing research and having an interesting job, not just the normal headline aspects that people are considering. Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Tom. I was wondering what I would have replied to that survey 5 years ago. So thank you so much. And I'm sure actually that the result of this survey will then feed the discussion later. We'll now move into the keynotes presentations. I just wanted to quickly remind you that there is no Q&A after each keynote, but do please add your questions in the chat box in the Zoom, because we'll take it from there. So our first keynote is Elouise Leonard-Cross. She is the group head of HR at Northumbrian Water. Elouise, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm delighted to speak at this event today, and want to share a bit of, I guess, a perspective very much from within an organisation. So Northumbrian Water covers the northeast of England, as many of you may be aware, but also Essex and Suffolk Water as well. So both of those sit within our overall group model organisation. And one of the things I just wanted to briefly share with you today was how we're looking at skills, talent, and probably really changing and challenging some of our approaches in how we look at how we educate and develop people throughout their career and at different points. We very much recognise some of the things that I talked about before, and Thomas's presentation was really helpful there in terms of reinforcing where your head is at as someone learning, student potentially looking at roles within the sector. So let me move on and talk to you a little bit about skills. So next slide. So what are we looking at? What information might be quite helpful if you're not already looking at this to be aware of? So our views on talent, we're looking at two things. We're looking sort of midterm, so this is during the asset management period that we're looking at. So for AMP8 that the water sector has just entered into takes us up to 2030. And that times beautifully with World Economic Forum, who look at skills in, they don't do it just for us, but they look at skills in 5-year blocks. So what they do is they will look 5 years ahead and analyse quite a lot of data to see what future skills look like. So before I talk a little bit about that, I want to flip to something else first, because I think it's quite easy to get onto looking at the skills based on industry before thinking about, well, what actually is the differentiator in terms of the talent that we end up appointing and also end up really working with to develop their career. So I want to start first just talking about durable and core skills. Now, for many of you, it'll be absolutely something that you're looking at and focusing on your development within. But I think the key thing when we talk about durable and core skills, they can exist in any sector, any professional area. So they sit across every industry and every geography. But they tend to be the absolute, they have a real impact on people's ability to operate within an organisation and to be able to take on and develop new skills and opportunities. For us, we kind of quite like the definition that talks about durable or core skills as being like this second rung of the ladder before you get to where you need to be. So actually, if people haven't invested in these durable core skills, these ability to be able to communicate, have an impact on people, to be resilient, to organize and focus on what needs to be achieved, a real range of things. But if people haven't focused on developing and refining those skills in those areas, they don't tend to perform quite as well when we're technically looking for the skills. So I think it's important just to say we can jump to highly technical and very current skills, and Tomas has given us a really useful insight across perspectives on that. But how do we make sure that we are investing and supporting those durable and core skills? So thinking about that as that real success platform to step up into the roles that you're looking for. And as an organisation that employs, so we employ just under 4,000 people, both in the northeast and southeast, plus obviously work with a really extensive delivery infrastructure. We know that when people hold more of those durable and core skills, they tend to be more effective and successful, but actually better able to handle when there are changes in how the role is done. So what are these top 10 fastest growing skills by 2030? So this is freely accessible and makes for a really good and interesting read if you are looking at the area of skills. But if you look at the World Economic Forum data on this, what they're looking at is very much echoing what Tomas just said in his presentation, is very much around some of those technology areas. They're absolutely coming through as skills and knowledge that people need. But actually, a lot of the other stuff you see is highly human. It sits much more closely with those durable and core skills. World Economic Forum are predicting that over this time frame, we are looking at 170 million new roles being created. So, a lot of new roles, and that's with a backdrop of 92 million roles being displaced. So that ongoing change of the kind of roles and skills we're looking for. But overall, that leaves us 78 million positive. We are looking at new jobs and new opportunities, and we as a business absolutely are seeing the jobs profile we had 5-10 years ago is definitely completely different today, and that's really exciting. So although we're seeing this technology sort of this increase, what I would say is think about this more. If you think about people who are curious and adaptable, they are looking for opportunities to use technology, and a good example of this is drone use. So, the water sector, use of drones in roles where it had never been considered, and training people to be able to use drones and use the data from drones is going to be quite a game changer. So think about technology, but complement it with the skill set of the ability to be able to relearn, be curious, and consider how you can use technologies in the role you're doing, rather than purist technology skills as they stand. So next slide, please. We think about skills models in a number of ways, and it might be helpful just to explain that to you, just in terms of how we're looking at the opportunities we create and our understanding of skills at each of those levels. So the World Economic Forum are predicting that 77% of all organisations are anticipating their plan to reskill their workforce over the next 5-year period. Not hugely surprising in that we know we need to keep up with demands and changes. But the way we look at things in a few different ways, and you can access this. This is taken from some work published in Forbes, but there's lots of different ways of looking at this. But we look at the workforce that we need to look at who are classed as on-ramp. So on-ramp is maybe where we look within our communities. It's offering opportunities to access employment. So, you might see things like government Kickstarter, but, we always want to create opportunities to ensure diversity and inclusion. As water providers, we serve every area of the community. We absolutely should be holding ourselves to account to creating skills and opportunities at different levels for all of our community as well. Then you look at education as a benefit. So this is really making sure that we bring people on board and we allow them to grow and learn within their role. And one of the things here is we're seeing more people come in and say, well, how do you partner with me and support as I want to further my career? So for us, it's been maybe postgraduate work, degree for some people, postgraduate, potentially doctoral. But education is definitely seen as a benefit depending on the role and when people join us. And then upskilling. So for us, upskilling is really focused on, do we make sure people have the skills they need? We accept that we will need to upskill people throughout. And reskilling is to really change the different roles. So whereas upskilling is getting people to be really skilled in their job they're doing, reskilling is about that total change. They maybe make a lateral move or work in quite a different function. And there's always outskilling. And what we have, because we work with such a wide range of partners, sometimes if there's a skill set that aren't something that applies to us anymore, there's always the opportunity to look at how that role, that person, that skill set can benefit elsewhere. Next slide. So for us, again, we found this model really interestingly. So although we look at 5 years for our workforce planning, so that is where we start to go, what are the roles and skills we need for the future? It also helps us to think about how we can resource the talent pipeline we need. So this is very much about how we're doing some things. This is standard, some of you may have seen this, it is the KPMG model, but it's very easy to talk to leaders in the business as they start to think about who they need in roles. So first of all, can we buy it? Where can we get our talent from? When we sort of say buy that, we're meaning, you know, is that through universities, through other, you know, sort of the supply of talent? Is it advertising? So basically, how do we acquire talent directly to work for us? But also, how can we build the talent we need, knowing the gaps we have? How can we upskill and reskill before we need it? And you definitely need to be looking at a few years in advance for that. Where can we borrow? It's good to have a blended model. You know, you don't want everyone in your headcount model. Some people, and we recognize this more and more, that some people have such key niche expertise that they need to serve a range of businesses and organizations. And actually, for economic success, we really shouldn't be selfish with talent. And the water industry is very good at sharing that expertise. But we also always ask ourselves, is there a technology solution that works here as well? So how can we use efficiencies with AI that actually allows people to focus on the work that's absolutely essential? And this helps with both our short, mid, and longer term thinking. Next slide. So how are we doing this? Well, this is our underpinning approach to our academy, but we look at, when we're bringing new people into the industry through apprenticeships, graduate schemes, we know they need a different kind of support to people who are growing and who come in and they have a very technical skilling requirement, which is potentially through very structured programs. We call them our competent operator schemes. So they cut across our water and wastewater areas, but really give structure and endorsement to the learning. But I think the key thing for us is that actually we're really encouraging that midpoint, that getting people to think about multiple career paths and you know, considering what's next. At the final end, just to reference this, we're really looking at how we retain. So we'd already talked about this, you know, at the opening there, this loss of talent from the industry. In some ways, we're looking at this wrong. There's a lot of people from our business who potentially are looking at retirement, but can contribute back and actually be retained in different employment models that keeps people working, which we know is good for well-being without the full-time roles. So for us, we are looking at that in the training space and how we support knowledge transfer through mentorship, potentially outside of your standard full-time role with our business. Next slide. So for us, Innovation Festival is absolutely key. We've had most of the Ofwat innovation funding, which has been really exciting for us. But the key for us is bringing people together around innovation. I want to go back to my first slide around enduring and core skills. People who are open to innovate, people who are curious, people who relentlessly want to learn and have conversations with different people tend to do really well in our business. You know, that's how River Deep Mountain AI, our huge drone project, came about. So this ability to meet and learn from different people and this idea that we can solve our problems through innovation runs deep for us. So in terms of what we look for, that is if people who are up for that. And the final slide for me is just a quote. We work with an organization called Trend Bible. They start to look at actually how consumers might look at things in the future. And we love the quote, adaptability is the new job security. I think you can tell from the things I've covered there that for us, it's about getting people who are curious, who are willing to try different things. They bring skills and knowledge we need, but there's something more than that, and how they work and how they embrace some of those opportunities is key to how we are managing our talent. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elouise. I really appreciate the point about adaptability, curiosity, resilience. We really need these skills. So we'll now move into the second keynote by Hugh Thomas. He is the Water Treatment Service Line Director at AtkinsRéalis. So Hugh, the floor is yours now.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Samuela. Is my slide up? So just by way of introduction to myself, I've spent the last nearly 12 years with AtkinsRéalis, global consultancy. Before that, I spent a decade of my career with a UK water company. I've also worked in the design and build field, so I've covered some of the different facets within the water sector. And I actually, in common with some of the other people on the debate today, did my MSc at Cranfield University. So that's a bit of background about me. In terms of AtkinsRéalis, as I said, we're a global consultancy, a big organisation. We got over 38,000 employees globally, and we work into a range of different sectors, generally in the infrastructure space, so transportation, buildings, power generation, nuclear, and most importantly for today, water. And we employ all the skills you'd expect within the water sector, and probably some of those that you wouldn't immediately think of. We work for all the UK water companies in some capacity, and also regulators, agencies. Some of those on large frameworks where we've got a lot of staff delivering major infrastructure projects. Some of them more focused, specialist skills. I think Elouise mentioned earlier. Okay, if you go to the next slide, please. What kind of things do we do within the water sector? So we talked about major projects. Some of those kind of snippets, those pictures in the middle there, are of projects we work on. Some of them are visualizations, some of them are part through the design phase, some are photographs of finished assets. But effectively, what I'm trying to convey is that we work into the water sector delivering projects at all stages, whether it's at that initial business planning phase, whether it's through the design, right through into operations and optimization. And I think one of the things that strikes me with my time in the industry is how we've moved into a very much an environmentally led delivery model. So we don't sort of think, right, what do we need to build, and then work around how's that going to influence air quality, water quality, how's it going to influence biodiversity. We actually had those right at the front and centre. And also something I'll come back to in a second is around the digital tools. So the digital transformation has been mentioned in the previous two presentations, and it's really important. We're on a real journey in terms of how we deliver, how we design, and how we implement new assets or upgrade existing aging assets. Next slide, please. So we've just started AMP8, started last month, and AMP8, the next 5-year investment cycle for the water sector, is enormous in comparison to previous asset management periods that have come before. So it's nearly double the size of AMP7. So I think the concern around skills and the concern around resources and capacity is well founded. What does AMP8 entail, and why is it so much bigger? Just picking a few of those kind of headlines below around what AMP8 entails. So over £100 billion over 5 years, enormous amount of investment. What's that investment there to achieve? I think we're all aware in terms of media and reputation that river water quality and overflows into environmental water bodies really top of the agenda for the water sector, but also for the public. And so there's a lot of investment to reduce those overflows and improve river water quality. But also within that, and I actually work more on the drinking water supply side of things in my day job, and you can see there's over 400 million litres per day of additional new water. So that's over 420 megalitres of new water, drinking water going to supply. And also in the bottom right, you can see there are 9 new reservoirs. So that's storage reservoirs, raw water storage reservoirs. Now we're working on one at the moment in the south of England, and that's the first new reservoir for over 30 years in the UK. It's over 50 years in the south of the UK. And so to have plans for 9 new ones, you can see there's a real step up in investment. And why is that investment there? If you look at the kind of aims of AMP8 that are highlighted, greater sustainability, improved customer outcomes, and resilience to future challenges like climate change. This is meeting the kind of expectations of and needs of the environment and people and customers' expectations. Next slide, please. So there's a sort of rhetorical question at the top of there. Is there much change happening in the water sector? I mean, absolutely. It's an incredible time to be working in the water sector. You know, there is no sense of sort of steadiness or kind of continuity. I think about the kind of developments we've seen. I mentioned environmentally led design, environmentally led engineering, you know, but essentially all of the implications around water supply, wastewater treatment, bioresources, you know, essentially getting benefit, so releasing value from wastewater, beneficial use of biocides, even looking at things like reuse of advanced treatment of fine effluent from wastewater treatment works to produce an additional resource for water supply. And running through all this like a thread is the drive to net zero. So all the water companies and the country as a whole has got net zero targets. And so everything we're doing is thinking about how can we do this in a way that produces or consumes less carbon or emits less carbon, and how can we also meet people's increasing expectations. On the right hand side of that slide, you can see that's taken from the Ofwat Rapid Forum, which is administering that deficit in water supply. So we saw in AMP8 we've got over 400 megalitres a day of new water. On the right hand side, those each one of those bubbles, those circles, they represent a scheme, a project to release additional water. And a lot of that new water is going into the water stressed southeast of England to maintain that supply demand. But essentially, those schemes, they've got all of the facets that go with that are associated with projects the way we do them, you know, in the 2025 and onwards. You know, it's environmentally led design, it's reuse, there's desalination schemes, seawater desalination schemes in there, and above all else, there's long transfers, so we're moving water further. So incredibly exciting times for the industry. If I could go on to the next slide, please. And this is a bit of a pet subject of mine, but essentially, if you think about those, the graphic on the previous slide with all of those new sources of water coming in and moving across in the UK to supply that supply demand deficit, if you go back, they're all essentially, we've still got to maintain, we've got to supply an extra 420 megalitres a day, but we've got to do it, we've got to make sure the water quality is still compliant with regulations, acceptable to customers. It's worth noting that you know, in the UK we have some of the best, highest quality drinking water in the world, and when we're making significant changes to water supply, like bringing new sources in and moving water further, we've got to make sure that we don't disrupt that, we don't sort of make any compromise in terms of water quality. So we do a lot of work in my part of the business around managing water quality right through from sources, you know, new sources, right through treatment and through the transmission network to customers, to ensure the water is resilient and it's always good to drink. Go on to the next slide, please. So I touched on the beginning, and it was mentioned in previous presentations around digital skills, and I don't think you can think about, you know, engineering in any sector without thinking about, you know, what opportunities lie within these digital transformation skills. So big data has been a real opportunity. You know, we've got enormous opportunities to understand systems and interpret data. So I think in terms of skills coming into the industry, being able to work with big data, being able to leverage the digital tools that are at our disposal now is a real asset. You know, just some examples from there. So parametric design, what does that actually mean? Well, we know we've got to have 45% reduction in overflow spills. essentially those structures, there's actually only a relatively modest number of variables with those structures. And so parametric design is basically putting repeatable designs with a relatively small number of variables in there and actually producing designs that are ready to construct much more quickly than if we were doing each one on a kind of case-by-case basis. Digital twins, a lot of people are aware of the opportunities of a digital twin, having a digital representation of a real-world system, whether that's a water supply system or a wastewater collection and treatment system. But getting the value out of those and implementing those is something that we spend a lot of time working on. And we've done a couple, and there'll be a lot more in the future. And AI and machine learning, I think if we go on to the next slide. So we developed in-house a few years ago, we developed a strategy or some principles around how we were going to look at what we do in terms of delivering. And this isn't just in the water sector, this is across the other sectors we work in buildings, in energy and so on. How can we leverage the benefits of AI? And it's changing so quickly, it's becoming so much more accessible. But one example I would give you is we've been applying machine learning and AI to water networks, because when you change a water network or you require a new supply to a new development, a housing development, there's lots of different ways you can achieve that. And if you do it kind of manually, then you can probably evaluate a few different options and it might take a few days. We can use machine learning and AI to actually evaluate hundreds of options in minutes and find that kind of best value solution, the lowest cost of carbon, in a much more efficient way. Next slide, please.
Hi Hugh, we've stopped hearing you.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks Hugh.
Okay, wonderful. Not quite sure what happened there. My microphone must have muted. Apologies. So what are we doing around bridging the skills gap? In the UK, we do attend careers fairs and events, and we run those ourselves, and we engage with the university. We've got strong links with a lot of universities, including Cranfield and others, and also STEM outreach. So starting earlier, so STEM outreach in schools and colleges. But we could clearly do more, because I think Tom's presentation earlier said that some of the students didn't see as much presence in water sector related companies. So there's definitely more we could do. And globally, we have got opportunities to move skills. So we've got a design office in India, which work into a lot of our UK clients. But we've also got that kind of global reach, so we can, in principle, move resources between regions. And also, because we work across different sectors, we can bring resources in from other sectors. So engineers and scientists that are working into energy or nuclear or transportation and so on. Often those skills are transferable. There can be challenges, and I think it's certainly something that, as an organisation the size that we are, we should be in prime position, and we do a lot of that. What we do find, and I think it's something that you mentioned earlier, which was that people at a very senior level tend to hold a lot of experience. They might be close to retirement. Getting that kind of movement of skills and experience is a bit more challenging. Okay, next slide, please. I think this is the final slide, and I just wanted to reinforce, I guess, some of the things I've said before. Why develop a career in the water sector? I mean, it's the change in the UK water sector, global water sector, is phenomenal, and you can be part of the solution. You can really make a difference in the water sector. Safe drinking water and sanitation are essential for human health. Managing environmental water quality, incredibly important for ecology. The journey to net zero runs through everything we do. I think something like 33% of the UK's electrical power is used in the water sector. So those opportunities for low carbon, and carbon savings are enormous. And being able to solve complex problems using those digital techniques and tools, and employing the kind of approach to, managing wastewater and getting the value from it, managing bioresources, getting the value from that. thinking about how we can solve problems. It's not about waste disposal, and drinking water quality, has to be maintained all the time. So I couldn't encourage anyone, enough to join the water sector. I think there's incredible opportunities, and hopefully I've shared a few of the areas that it's good to be skilled in to really make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hugh, and a very clear overview of the sector. And I really appreciate you mentioning digitalization as a critical factor, right, to consider in our road towards net zero. So that's very important. I just want to quickly remind you all to keep putting your Q&A, your questions, in the chat box, and we will take them during the discussion. We'll now move to our third keynote, Fiona Punchard. She's the Head of Membership and Communication at the Institute of Water. So Fiona, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Samuela, and lovely to be with you all this morning. So my first slide, if possible, please. So yes, as mentioned, I'm Head of Membership and Communications at the Institute of Water, and as you may have seen on my screen, that we've been around for 80 years now, providing professional support to people working in the UK water sector. So next slide, please. So I'm just going to do a little refresh. So yes, we're at a time where there's been years of complaints about what's happening in the sector. Politicians have been complaining. Public figures have been using their platforms to address issues, to satirize, to have a pop at the sector. But no, this isn't 2025, it's 1858. And the politicians sitting on the banks of the River Thames and the time of the Great Stink went, something must be done. And for those of you who will be very well aware of the water sector history, this became at the time of Sir Joseph Bazalgette and the great work that was done in London to develop the Victorian sewage system. So the work that's coming in now through AMP8 is being deemed as our 21st century Bazalgette moment. But it's not just about skills, and we talk a lot about skills gap, but it is about the people who will be involved in that and the communities that you'll be serving and the resilience more broadly of our clean and wastewater systems. So next slide, please. It's been touched on so much already this morning, but yet there's a fantastic challenge being faced. Billions of pounds of investment entering through AMP8 and beyond. Yes, we have an ageing workforce and there's fast changing skills are being needed. And recruitment, retention, development, as Elouise has touched on, are right at the heart of many companies' board agendas right now. And you can see there are a few facts and figures there that, yep, we're looking at nearly 6,500 new employees needed every year. But we've got 16% of the workforce retiring, and that's equating to a skills gap. But really, when we say skills gap, that's a people gap. So how do we recruit and retain in? So next slide, please. Thomas touched on it beautifully before, but there are greater expectations of people as they come into any sector, but particularly the water sector. And it is these days more than just a pay slip and clocking in and clocking out and going home at the end of the day. People want to feel that they belong to an organisation that has meaning and purpose in their life. And staff want to feel that they're being developed and that they're supported and that there is culture, learning, and that there's a drive there to help them in their career path. But it's also about delivering for stakeholders, and they expect us to deliver more than just promises. So we're having to ask ourselves, how are we going to meet that? How are we going to deliver and serve our customers, serve our communities, and serve the environment? Next slide, please. Very quick quiz, and Peter's going to come back to me later with the answer. For those of you on the Zoom call, if you can bob in the chat or raise your hand virtually in terms of how many of you belong to a professional body right now, and we'll come back to that answer later. Next slide, please. So for us as a professional body, I would say now is a great time to start thinking about and prioritising your own professional development, and why, of course, I'd say joining a professional body like ours is so important right now. Next slide, please. And this is why. Those of you who do belong to a professional body or are thinking of joining one, you'll know that you'll get some letters that you can stick after the end of your name alongside your professional and academic qualifications. But professional bodies like ours provide more than just letters after your name. We provide a way for people in the sector to connect and learn and grow and develop from each other. It can be really easy to get your head stuck in the day job and get stuck within your own organisation. What we do as organisations like ours is that you can connect and learn outside of your immediate group. So whether that's that you're working for a water sector company and you are wanting to understand how supply chain operate, or if you're wanting to understand a bit more and keep those connections with academia and research, or wanting to have a neutral ground to engage and talk to regulators, that's where professional bodies like ours come in. And as Samuela talked about earlier at the very top, in terms of IWA, who we have close connections with, we also offer a young professionals network. And we find that our young professionals really value having that peer support network as they're going through their early stages of their career. And what it can help to do is reinforce and reaffirm a sense of pride and belonging in working in the water sector. Hugh touched on it just now. There are fantastic reasons to actually continue staying in the water sector or to take your qualifications and put them into the water sector. It is more than just turning on taps and flushing the toilet. It is absolutely a health benefit, a community benefit, and actually, yes, we can have positive impact on the environment as well. Next slide, please. So where do we fit in again? So part of what we do is we contribute to what you may have heard of in terms of continuous professional development, but it's something that all of us do in our work life. And it's how we make sure that as we grow through our careers, so once you've left Cranfield, Sheffield and Newcastle, you don't stop learning. But there are ways and means of how you do it. And it's not all about doing further courses. It is how we use our day-to-day interactions, how we use our problem solving, how we adapt and learn to new skills and technologies. This is all continuous professional development. And it's how we keep a pace with make sure that our careers grow. And that's where bodies like ours step in. So next slide, please. As an institute, we take a particular approach to how we help you as you're coming in to continuous professional development. So some professional bodies, they will do it in terms of, and you may have seen this, that it's you need to record so many hours or you need to record so many points. We like to treat you as an individual and take a much more holistic and supportive approach. So it's more about the quality of reflection of what you're doing. And is it at the right approach and right level for where you are in your career and what your aspirations are? And it can also be in terms of helping you understand what actually does count as continuous professional development. So it's not always just about, have I been to a webinar today? It can be, I actually presented something today and that's part of my development. It can be, I helped a colleague today solve an issue that they had. That's actually stretching yourself and that's continuous professional development. It can even be, I went out of my comfort zone and I went to a networking event. That's all continuous professional development. But it can also be, I took this leadership development course. That's continuous professional development. We will work with you in terms of what your career ambitions are and help map your CPD needs alongside that and help you when you're trying to understand how to record it and put that towards your development. Next slide, please. So this is the thing to do. So you might not have even thought about it if you're in your studies right now, but it's a time that you can actually take stock of where you want to be. So if you are going to go into the water sector, or even if not, wherever you're going to end up next, what is it you want to achieve? What kind of person do you want to be? And it's not all about where do you want to be in 10 years' time, but some of it can even be, where's my next step in 3 months, 6 months, a year? It can be quite a hard question to answer, to go, I want to be the CEO of Thames Water in 15 years' time. But it might just be, actually, I just want to make sure that I've got my next role, that I've worked success in my team and I've actually progressed and developed. So it's baby steps for some people, and for some people they really know. I had a colleague who knew from the age of 15 that she wanted to be a chartered accountant, and she knew that straight away. I can't say I was quite that way. Mine was quite a squiggly career, as they call it. So once upon a time, I started off in a finance department. As you can see, I'm not there now. But that doesn't mean that your path is right or wrong. The next slide, please. One of the things that CPD will then help you with is, once you've understood and got to grips with how to do it, and when we help you with that, is something called professional registration. So this is about you beyond your academic career, marking out and engaging with your technical competence and professional commitment. So we're licensed by a number of organisations, and one of those is within the environment. And these are additional ways that you can demonstrate your commitment to ongoing and professional learning. Next slide, please. So what does that actually mean? So actually, you have to meet some competency. So this is where it does become a bit more academic and technical, but you don't have to sit exams. There's two different routes in. You can either do a more technical route in terms of an academic route, or there's what we would call an experiential route. So this is based on the skills and experience you build up through your career. So broadly, you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got some knowledge and understanding applicable to the level that you're going for, that you understand things around design, development of processes, systems, services and products, that again, for the appropriate for the level you're going for, that you have demonstrated experience in certain levels of responsibility, management or leadership, that you have a certain level of communication, interpersonal skills, and that you again are able to demonstrate your professional commitment. And what we encourage our people to do is to actually put that really into the context of water, and always in the back of your mind thinking, why am I working in water? What is the contribution I'm making through water to the communities and environment in which I operate? Next slide, please. So professional registration comes at 3 different levels. So you can start at technician level, and then depending on the discipline, it will either be called incorporated or registered, which is the middle level, and then the highest level is chartered level. And that is usually all related through to your skills and experience. So as you grow in your career, you develop more skills, you'll develop more competencies, and that makes you more likely to be able to attain the level that you're going for. So it's probably at the really early start of your career, something like chartership might not be the right move straight away, but we can absolutely help you get there. Next slide, please. This is just an idea in terms of what it looks like, in terms of the things we look for when we're working with registrants, in terms of achieving those sorts of registration grades. And some of the things we're also working on is also in terms of how we can support those going into apprenticeships, in terms of a shortened route, which has been developed by the Science Council and Society for the Environment. So there is there's a level of demonstrating your professionalism and ongoing commitment to your career and sector, wherever you want to be in your career. Next slide, please. So to wrap it up and to mirror Hugh again, I feel like everybody's already said everything so wonderfully already, is absolutely be part of the solution. We've heard the criticism, and some of it we hold our hands up and go, absolutely, we can do better. But to be better, we need people who are passionate and committed and willing to learn and grow and be part of that solution. So Peter, were you able to get me an answer as to how many people put their hands up?
Yeah, so it was about 10 to 15%, something like that. I'm not sure whether that's an indicator of how people have engaged with the chat function, but yeah, I don't know how that aligns with your perhaps expectations of where we'd sit.
That's actually pretty good, I think, and certainly it's definitely a much higher percentage than in terms of where we would sit ourselves. So that's really reassuring to see that we've got 10 to 15% of people on the call who are part of a professional body already. But yes, if people are curious and want to find out more about what a professional body can do for you, then get in touch. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fiona. You know, one of my favorite habits is really to start with the end in mind, and see what skills you can develop to reach that goal. So that was very interesting. Thank you so much. We'll now move to the last of our keynotes. Stephen Barrett is the Director of Membership and Strategic Engagement at the Energy and Utility Skills. So Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much indeed. And I think if I was in the room, I would have said that I am part of a professional membership body, although not the Institute Water at the moment. So maybe I should look at that. But look, good morning, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to come along and speak to you today. If we can just have the slides up, please. And move on to the second slide. So my name's Steve Barrett, as said. I'm Director of Membership and Strategic Engagement. My role is really covering that engagement with our member organisations, of which there are 70 right the way across the energy and utilities industry, so water, power, gas and waste and recycling, and also that strategic engagement with government, regulators, and the many external stakeholders. In terms of the business, Energy and Utility Skills is a standard-setting organisation for the water, power, gas and waste and recycling industries. We deliver membership, consultancy, apprenticeship, endpoint assessment, qualifications and industry schemes. Our vision is skills for a greener world, which I think fits in really well today. And the mission is to develop that safe, skilled and sustainable workforce with the energy and utilities industry. So we don't sit in a darkened room, we definitely collaborate. We work with industry, government regulators, collaborating on strategic and tactical challenges to identify and develop solutions which will deliver that mission. Lots of data points in my deck. So I've just put up a QR code there. So if you'd like to link in with me on LinkedIn, I can come back to you with any points beyond this session. If we just move on to the next slide then, please. So much has been said already on this, so I'm not going to labour the point, but certainly in the context of the water industry and the wider industries, there are many competing challenges. So I just wanted to pull out a few of those considerations. And really, the water industry is facing a range of challenges, not least because of the adjacent industries and the infrastructure which is being developed, because it's not just about water. If you look at the gas industry, so they've just gone through the Rio price setting period. If hydrogen comes down the road, then there's going to be a significant challenge there. There's going to be a resource demand, which are quite similar to the skills which are required in the water industry. As we know, the water industry is one of, if not the largest user of power. Therefore, the need to decarbonise and achieve the government's ambitious net zero targets will have an impact on water as well as many other industries. Climate change, increased frequency of weather, extreme weather demands impacting how we think about moving water and storing it across the UK. We've already heard about the investment across AMP8 and the requirement for additional reservoirs. So they're all big challenges. Also, aging infrastructure. We talked about when the water infrastructure was put together. Well, look, we've got the introduction of new technologies. We're seeking to improve productivity, maintain high standards. And also the really important part is the reputation with the public. So our sector reputation and how we address that is a consideration. Also a time of major growth, and we talked about 104 billion, but the investment that's going on in the energy infrastructure as well. So the transmission networks have just gone through their Rio T3 process with Ofgem, so therefore there is investment on that side, and that's also trying to maintain that investor confidence to deliver that future plans. And these are all things which are really happening beyond many of our controls, certainly looking at this from a skills system. So many of those considerations will impact that workforce. So let's have a look at the workforce then. If we just move on to the next slide, please. So many of the challenges which we have across the workforce are based on probably that macro data. And I think Elouise mentioned some of these figures earlier, but we've currently got about 83,200 people employed in the sector, and by 2030 that's set to forecast to move up to 113, so an increase of around 30,000 people. And if you look at the graph on the right hand side there, you can see some of the attrition rates and actually some of that new workforce which will be required. So therefore, looking at new jobs, there's around 30,000 new jobs, or 4,300 a year, and around 43,700 new people will be required into the industry. So we talk about moving people around within industry, and that consideration about how do we stop them going off to perhaps industries which are perceived as slightly cooler and perhaps delivering what that student is looking for. Then there are challenges associated with that as well. Also, looking at 16% of the workforce, or 13,700, set to retire by 2030. So there's some really big numbers in there, and we need to consider what the impact and what we do about that. If we just move on to the next slide, please. So in terms of the level of estimated occupations which we've got in here, there is a number of key factors in here. Looking at some of the key things which come out, what we call SOC codes. The big ones really around science, research, engineering, technology professionals. So they are up in that RQF level 7 and 8. And then also looking at process, plant and machine operatives. So the numbers are significant there, and also not not forgetting that administrative occupations. And some of the things which we're looking at within energy and utility skills is how do we increase the size of that hopper to get new people into industry? Across the entire industry's energy and utilities, we're looking at around 312,000 new people coming into the industries. And that's over the next 5 years. There are challenges, both geographically specific, but also the relevant qualification levels coming into industry. And the point to call out there is, I guess, 47,000 or 47% of those, or 20,000 people, are going to be required at RQF level 3 or below. So we need to consider, how do we get people into that industry? So we just move on to the next slide then. So we understand the context then. We've heard a little bit about what that demand profile looks like, a little bit about the macro skills challenges, and we've already talked about some of the specifics around the water industry, but some of the things which recent research has called out around 3 key areas in the water industry has highlighted these macro challenges. So the first one being a shortage of skills, expertise, available resources in local authorities. So industry can plow ahead, but actually local authorities understanding what the requirements are is simply not there. A greater use of AI to enable more efficient, accurate optioneering will be key to accelerating that delivery. One of the big things which our chief execs tell us is that we need productivity. We need to be accelerating the work that we're doing. If we can deliver it quicker, more efficiently, we'll deliver a better service for the public and the general population. So therefore, that's got to be a great thing. Need for knowledge and expertise in those nature-based solutions beyond those specialist catchment teams to the wider business. So nature-based solutions becoming more common across industry, and certainly trying to drive those forward is going to be a huge part of going into AMP8. Pathways to competence are not well established. So ad hoc upskilling, things like geology, water quality and hydrogeology, as well as applied maths and chemistry, they're all going to be considered as we go forward. Also, a demand for specialist degree and postgraduate courses increases. Challenges would be to create greater diversity of entry pathways. I talked earlier about the potential for widening that hopper, so therefore getting people in, both coming out of university through PhD doctorates, as well as getting people in at that base level and creating those career pathways through industry to make sure there was a route to the top for people. Also, a consistent cross-industry technical development framework. We definitely need that on those nature-based solutions and catchment management. We simply don't have that at the moment. And also, top emerging roles include AI specialists, data scientists, data engineer, big data developers. So all these things are key considerations as we go forward. But look, if I talked a little bit more about the skills specific to nature-based solutions, I might be here for quite some time, as well as the net zero and bioresources. But I think probably the one to pull out in this discussion, the things which has come out a number of times in this conversation, is looking at artificial intelligence and data and digital skills, which are going to be common across a number of roles. And as we move forward into that more digital AI type space, then there's going to be greater consideration, and that's not going to be a step change. We think that's going to be an evolution probably over the next 5 to 10 years. So things like data analyst, Power BI, SQL, so programming language, looking at things like Microsoft Azure, Python, data and engineering, project management, data management, all those things, but not just looking at the data. It's about understanding and interpreting that data and doing something with it to make sure we deliver an effective infrastructure. So we just move on to the next slide then. So let's have a look about what we're doing about this. So first of all, we need to collaborate for success. So one of the things which Energy and Utility Skills has been working on is a strategy which will be launched in October this year, and that will be around looking at 4 key elements. The first one being defining that workforce demand. This is about that key research which goes on every year, looking at workforce demand. It's looking at also workforce resilience, so understanding what the demand is, as well as how resilient we are within that workforce, and that looks at a number of metrics. Also looking at attracting the workforce that we need. We talked earlier about the reputation, that being key to what industry needs, and actually how do we create an environment where people look at the water industry and the energy and utilities industry, and they say, look, if I want to deliver a really meaningful job and have an impact on the environment, then this is the industry to get involved in, and that's the message that we're trying to convey. We're also looking at delivering awareness campaigns. We're looking at developing career pathways. And one of the things we talked about earlier was a lack of understanding of what those career pathways is. So one of the things we're looking at, or we're certainly developing this year, is an occupational mapping tool, which will actually feed into a career mapping tool. So therefore people can look at this system and it will be able to navigate what those roles are that they could look to be getting into, and actually those progression routes beyond that as well. And that's all about developing those things like qualifications, apprenticeship standards, and the right skills that are required for delivering that work. And also then delivering that, or developing and deploying that safe skills sustainable workforce. This is going to be about timing, making sure we understand what those skills requirements are. Going back to my point about the occupational map, making sure that if any gaps that are identified are then filled with subsequent qualifications. And this is about making sure that we are industry or demand led, therefore the skills infrastructure can deliver the skills which are required. Many people tell me every day about how much an apprenticeship or a qualification or a course will reach a certain amount of competency, but what we're looking to do is to drive an accuracy of that training delivery to make sure that it delivers the competencies required for carrying out that job. And then last but not least, really importantly, I mentioned earlier about losing people to other industries. It's retaining that workforce. So we need diversity. We need to, if people are thinking about leaving an organization, we need to retain them in the industry. So therefore we're looking at systems whereby we can point people in the direction of other organizations that are looking for the same type of skills. So therefore we don't lose those skills from industry. And I'd encourage people to look at energy and utility careers and jobs as a website, perhaps to lodge their details and therefore be informed of various jobs which are coming out of industry and general information about some of the great opportunities which are out there for industry. But look, some of the outputs of this are that, yes, we do want a safe, skilled, sustainable workforce. That vision, absolutely critical, but the prize is much bigger. And let's not forget that social mobility across our workforce can be really important. Improving mental and physical well-being of millions beyond that direct workforce, absolutely critical. Improving the lives of thousands of UK citizens through creation of meaningful jobs. I talked about 312,000 right the way across energy and utilities, but water has its own drive as well. Also improving the lives, creating pathways into industry. So if we can point people in the direction where they need to go, we can create those attractive environments, and also creating that reliable infrastructure with cleaner waterways, improved air quality, improved natural spaces, and flood prevention. These are all the big wins, the big prize. It's beyond what we consider as an industry. It's societal change. It's about creating the right environment for us to live in and also our children to live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. You presented very, very interesting data, which I'm sure will feed the discussion now. So with this, we conclude our keynote session of the day. I really would like to thank all the keynotes for giving such insightful presentations. So now I think just wanted to remind you all to keep adding your questions into the chat box, and we'll move to my favorite part of the event, which is the discussion. So I wanted to invite our keynotes to stay for the panel discussion, and we are also joined by our panelists, Professor Kamal Birdi from the University of Sheffield, Thomas, who you heard before, WIRE PhD student, and then Penelope Savidou and Matthew Pitt, also WIRE PhD student. So welcome everyone. So nice to see you all here. So I think we can start with the discussion. To start, I wanted to invite our new panelists to comment maybe on the presentations we just saw. Did anything catch your attention? Anything notable that you wanted to mention? Maybe we'll start with you, Kamal.
Thank you very much, Samuela, and thank you very much to the keynotes. I really enjoyed the talks from different perspectives, and I think for me, what it captured was the dynamic nature of the water sector, dynamic in terms of changing demands, increasing demands and goals, for example, with AMP8. also the dynamic nature of opportunities that are arising through new technologies, the availability of more data, and the need, therefore, then for us, the skills that we have now are not going to be enough. It is about the development of new skills. And I was really interested to see how different organizations are tackling that approach in terms of strategies for developing skills in different ways and also retaining the workforce as well. So I think it's also just highlighting the types of technical skills we need, also the non-technical skills around communication, leadership, the working with different groups and disciplines, the importance of that is becoming more important as well. So I'll touch on some of those later on, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
On other aspects, but thank you very much. I think that was great.
Great. Thank you, Kamal. How about you, Penelope?
Hello. It was very interesting to listen about all the different aspects and how the water sector is prepared to fill these skill gaps, and it's reassuring to know that there are collaborators out there that they are thinking about bringing into trainings and helping with the personal development of the employees if entering the water sector. So for me, it was a very interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to contributing in the debate later.
Thank you so much. And Matthew, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for the talks, everyone. I thought everything was great, really. The only real core point, moving away from some of the other things that people have said already, is policy. I think it's quite an interesting conversation to have around policy in the water sector, particularly coming from a student background. I've previously worked in industry, and seeing from Tomas's information how many people feel so ill-equipped maybe coming out of their student positions, looking into the industry on policy. And I think there's quite a big fear, maybe is a fair comment, on not really understanding it properly coming out of a student space into an industrial space. And I wonder if it's just something as a broader topic that the university-led direction, let's say, can do to develop those skills in a better way and maybe make students more prepared. I just thought it was something I would highlight before we start talking about everything else.
Sure. And Tomas, do you have anything to add?
It was just very useful to see the link between the student results of the survey, and yeah, I mean, I think all the presentations were very linked by that. The student, especially like on the policy thing that Matt just mentioned, it's pretty clear that students have some of the same worries that the water sector has.
Yeah, for me, what was very interesting in your survey was to see how the students are really driven by purpose, growth, opportunities, but also I think some of the students mentioned the work-life balance, which I think is quite important at the moment. So maybe Penelope, Matthew and Tom, I wanted to continue with you with a bit of a challenging question. Is there anything you would change about how the sector engage with young water professionals?
Am I happy to take that? I'll take the lead on that for the first one. It's an interesting point. I think industry has some responsibility, let's say, towards students, and I think that's a fair comment, of maybe not directly engaging with universities, but discussing with universities directly rather than students about what they need to see maybe in curriculum. And I think that's something that's already ongoing. But the point I really wanted to make was about sort of like emergence, AI, all of this kind of thing. I feel like the water sector right now is moving into a position where there might be a lack of understanding about the opportunities and what's needed. So it's very difficult maybe for students in their positions right now and engagement with the water sector to understand what skills are going to be needed, what is important for the water sector to take forward for students, if that makes sense. I think it's quite a difficult notion of, can the water sector do more? Well, it's difficult if the water sector almost doesn't know in some ways what it needs right now with the skills. So we can say about AI and data science, all these kind of things, but these aren't sectors that are really provided on water course curriculums right now. And I think that's a fair comment. And even if they are they in depth enough to the needs that maybe industry might need from a graduate? Yeah.
Very interesting point. Anyone else wants to add anything on that?
I could add, because I've been working with models and a little bit on AI and data-driven approaches. I think it would be very interesting if we can get an idea of what is needed. And it would be also nice if we can have a collaboration between the universities and the projects we do for the water sector on acquiring data properly, because when we talk about data-driven and AI approaches, I think we have a big gap on how much data we have that they will help models to actually be representative. So a collaboration, like Matt said, on understanding what the needs of the sector is and also help driven the student research towards there will be very helpful. And I will also want to understand what is the idea of the water sector when it comes to the workforce and how international students can be integrated at the moment in the water sector. I think that is a big issue. We've been devoting 4 or 5 years helping the UK water sector solve some of the most crucial issues, and it's very difficult to understand how we could be absorbed in the workforce at this point. So that's for me.
Okay, yeah, just a follow-up on some of that discussion. We've had a comment come through around the fact that the survey identified that quite a lot of students want to go into kind of a research area afterwards. Now, we realise that we have a bit of a biased survey because we have PhD students, so you kind of almost self-selected for research, but it's around how we can better integrate that research with our industry partners, and any thoughts around how we can do that a bit better. So both a question to the industrial colleagues and our students. Anyone want to take a lead on that one?
Do you mind if I speak first, everyone? Yeah, I think I have a bit of a position on this from working with an industrial partner for my research project, as all of us do at Cranfield. And the pertinent point for me from my own work is my industrial partner has been very direct and maybe assertive is the right word on the targets, needs and goals coming out of my research project. Fundamentally, they want to develop me as a student, but also fundamentally industry wants something out of this research project, right? The point and the bottom line I want to make is I think it's important for the industrial partner, in my case being in a research project, to show a lot of initiative and to take stock and be almost in a way a good project manager. Like you don't need to, like in my case, I didn't need to be handheld or directed in a sense, but there were clear goals and requirements and needs coming from my research project, things that my industrial partner wanted to see out of the research that were quite clearly defined. And for me, starting as a PhD student, I thought that was really important. You know, now I'm a final year, obviously it's a bit different, but at the beginning you don't really know anything about being a PhD student and running a project. You're just finding your feet and you're trying to understand research. So but industry, I think that's, for me anyway, in my opinion, that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments from the panelists?
I think it comes down to a lot of the interests that students have. I think there's a perception that if you go into industry, you might get stuck in a role that isn't interesting. Mm-hmm. Potentially. I mean, it's not always the case. I worked in industry before, not related in the water sector. And I think it's a big mix. So I think that a lot of students' goals is to continuously do interesting work, and academia has that perception. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just a follow-up on that, right? So we talked a bit about the reputation and visibility of the sector. So do you think we have a perception problem, and maybe what can we do to change the narrative to make the sector more attractive? Maybe Fiona, I'll go to you as communication expert.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because obviously what Thomas showed is that actually it's really preying quite heavily on PhD students' minds, and it is one of those things that until the public perceive and what they perceive as seeing things changing, it is going to be a little bit harder. But all we can do is actually keep putting those programs in place and talking about them and shouting about them. But it will be a slightly longer road, because I think where we're at is that it's not going to be an overnight change of narrative. It is going to be a slightly slow paced approach to doing it. And people need to rebuild their trust in us as a sector, ultimately, and trust that when we say we're going to fix things, that they see us fixing things. There's only so much that comms on its own can do things.
Correct. Anything? Yeah, Stephen.
I absolutely agree with Fiona. It's about changing the narrative, and I think it's about creating the stories which people can relate to. At the last conference I attended for the water industry, we talked about one about the sector attraction element and how do we get people thinking differently about industry, and then we went straight on to talking about Thames Tideway and the project which was going on there and the investment which had been had, and you'll never see the Thames Tideway in the news talking about the great work which they've done and the millions upon millions which have been invested, the problems which they've had to overcome, and it's all that long game to make sure that we have an aging infrastructure of Victorian sewers and the likes, and it takes time to change. So it will be about getting those really positive messages out there. So therefore, you can start to change that narrative. But I don't think we can do it all at once either. It's not, changing public opinion is going to be a challenge. But I think it's starting without trying to boil the ocean, so to speak, and starting with the people that are seeking jobs in the industry, and then growing it beyond that, because you need to start influencing people going on apprenticeships. Then you're influencing school teachers, you're influencing parents, beyond parents, you're influencing other people in that circle. So therefore, it's about creating things like alumni and STEM ambassadors that can go into those local schools and just starting to change that narrative. But it's a long road. And I don't think it should be underestimated, but I think we need to start at the grassroots and really tackle that perception from that job-seeking community, that people that can come in and change it to a narrative that says, look, you're going to be here solving this, this climate resilience, conundrum, and it's about giving them a bigger purpose than just coming in and saying, I've got to, I was interested, Thomas, some of the things that came out of that survey was pay was mentioned a few times, and in the interest in work, and from a research student, I'm hardly surprised that they do want an interesting job because they're coming out at that such a high level. But I think as one said, we all need a purpose, and I think having a purpose which really delivers mitigating that risk of climate change as best we possibly can within the water industry and doing good for society, it has to be a real positive message. I just don't think we do too well in getting that message out there to people, but it's difficult against the backdrop of what we see in the news so much. So I think we need to fix one problem and then make sure we kind of change that narrative.
Very good point. Anyone else wants to comment on that? Maybe we start with you. Oh, sorry.
Can I
Sure, come on.
I just wanted to tap in terms of expectations of younger workers and just being aware of generational differences now in terms of what younger workers expect. I think that was highlighted in the survey Tom was showing, that it's not just about pay, it's not just a job, but it is about meaningful work. I think that's a really good term to use. Meaningful work, good work, decent work, but also work-life balance is more important now. That ability to feel that you can thrive and grow and get a balance between work and non-work. And it's good for employers to be aware of that as well. If you want to attract people into the industry, it's not just this is what we need, but it's also what do you need as a workforce as well. So yeah, that's the point I just wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you, Kamal. And Hugh?
Yeah, thank you. I think going back to the question of the narrative, and I think I'd echo a point that Stephen just made, which is that it's very difficult to influence, sort of the wider public opinion. I mean, I'm not a media expert, and I'm not kind of expert in communications, but I think that starting at that influencing those that are considering, a role in the water sector. So the survey the results that Tom that you shared, those are all people that are in research and academia, and they could be choosing that journey into the water sector. And some of them are maybe thinking twice about it because of that sort of perception. I do feel that to borrow the phrase, rather than trying to sort of boil the ocean and get into an area that I don't, probably not qualified to judge how you change the narrative. In the wider media, it's sharing all of this really good stuff, this really exciting and novel, and being part of the solution with those that kind of are considering it and in a field where they can move into it is a good first start. I mean, for a number of years, I was involved in the industrial advisory panel for the MSc course at Cranfield. And I used to run a short session during induction week around what a kind of career in consultancy looked like. And, it was, and this really echoes that point that was raised earlier, which is it was an opportunity to share with people that were in the right technical areas, they were in academia, they were looking towards different sectors, share with them, what do you actually do in the water sector? What challenges are we solving? We're thinking about net zero, we're thinking about digitalization, and that's a really good way of highlighting what we're doing, the good things that are being done, with an audience that are able to kind of see that and not just kind of reacting to the latest sort of bad news sells newspapers, sort of post in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments on that point before we move on? Just to check that we've got everyone.
Could I just add on that, just to say I absolutely echo what's been said there. For us, it's that focus about sometimes people don't know the things we're working on unless we do a really good job of sharing them, and actually great communications is really important, that we tell our story well, and sometimes that can be undervalued. So I think that in terms of being able to, for us, it's talking about the innovation, it's talking about the opportunities, but just speaking to something that Hugh referenced there, it's making sure people understand what the jobs are and look beyond the old maybe a traditional job description. Actually, how the job and the worker's experience does change continually, but the more exposure we can give young people early careers to understand that, it may be that for us as a business aren't right for their first role, but actually we may be an organization people want to bring their talents to in the future role. So I think it's we want to sort of magnetize people wanting to work for us or wanting to contribute in whatever form that is, but that is absolutely about us talking about our ambition, telling our story, and making our plans and the work we hope to achieve really clear and accessible, not just talking industry to industry, making it really work for anyone looking to get involved.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to talking around AI and data. I think there's a number of the speakers sort of honed in on the fact that we're going to need all of these data scientists, computer scientists, and so on working in the sector. How do we persuade those people to come into the sector? So it's two parts to the question really. How do we do that, and are there challenges where you have tried to recruit in those areas? And then how do we upskill kind of current employees to be able to do some of this stuff and to talk to these data engineers, data scientists to get across what we need? So perhaps Elouise, again, we could go with you. You look like nodding your head.
Yeah. Absolutely, because I think sometimes you use the words data, technology, AI, and people sort of think, oh, that isn't me, and they sort of deselect themselves as thinking that applies. For us, it starts with getting as much of your workforce as possible to use everyday technology advancements in a way that's easy. So, things like the equivalent of ChatGPT, but, business suitable equivalents, that people start using it to find ways to make their job and their tasks easier. People used to type out our sort of health and safety forms, they do it audio, it translates it to text, so people have got all these time-saving tools, and I'm talking about very much everyday technology, but the more comfortable we can get people with that, it really helps us look at the future. In terms of our talent pipeline, things are fairly good in that people are quite excited by some of the environmental challenges we want to tackle as a business, and some of the aspiration, ambition around the way we can do it in a more innovative way. So I know I keep talking about this sort of these enduring skills and this attitude that people have, but I do find that how we communicate that stuff really helps. I also think one of the things that we find quite helpful is when people actually within our business talk to some of the individuals doing this this work, when they understand more of the AI based work, or people working with big data who makes it accessible. That really helps people start to understand it, see the value, and actually make it feel maybe something slightly less removed. So highly human, I guess, would be my angle to come at initially around that work. But there are people, we've started with apprenticeships in this area because of the reason we know it's going to be a skill set. You have to, as an employer, be willing to start your investment 5 years before you need the skills. There's no getting away from it. We have to start early, and we have to create and support those opportunities.
Thanks, Elouise. Any other panelists want to talk to that subject? Yeah, Stephen.
Yeah, I think it's the first one is attracting people into the industry. I think where students perhaps would have been looking at jobs that are from been developing skills in data and AI, it's probably not the first sector that they would look at as a choice. So I think it's about presenting, as Elouise has mentioned there, the scale of the challenge as we move from where we are now and where we're going is about kind of saying, well, look, that's not good. Those jobs are not going to stay the same as they are now. We need those big data analysts. We need people using AI, and I think there's a little bit about bringing people on within the organization. As you said, is it going from plugging in a handheld device to do some kind of fault finding on a system, on a network, on a bit of infrastructure, or is it as simple as using business-based ChatGPT type systems? But I think the challenge that we have, if we're looking to bring in the brightest and best talent and diverse talent as we possibly can as well, because obviously that's a challenge. I think we need to be thinking about how we position this in the future, and also the timescales associated with it. And then when we bring them in, I think we also need to manage expectations, because like it or not, we are still very much in that analog space in many parts of the business, and we still need to do a lot of the basics around digging up roads and doing all that kind of work. But I think the digital element is how we move forward, but we manage expectations, so therefore we don't get people in and then we lose them straight away because they said, well, hang on a sec, you told me this was a diverse environment, you told me this was a digital forward-looking industry, and it's not quite there yet. So I think unless we get those people in, then we're not going to be able to transition and become that highly productive, highly efficient, effective network infrastructure that the public needs.
Thanks, Stephen. Any other comments? Yeah, Fiona.
Yeah, it's just to pick back up again that what a lot of this always boils back down to is what are the stories and the narrative that we're telling. And picking up back in terms of what Thomas said is that people need to feel like they have meaning in what they're doing. So we talk about data skills, and it implies it's something a little bit different and something over there, and it's not contributing to the bigger. But if we can help and tell those stories back in terms of people who are in those areas as to how they contribute to something bigger than themselves, it's not that they're just looking with a set of data. That data contributes to something bigger, and that data contributes to how the sector can deliver better for the environment and deliver better for customers and for the communities. And if they can also see and hear those stories of people who are doing those jobs now, and it's the old, if you can't see it, you can't be it, that we show that better representation. We show and have those people telling those stories of the difference and impact and positive impact they're making out there, then that can help as well.
Great, thank you. And just to follow on then with our students, do you kind of feel you're being prepared well enough for this brave new world with AI data? A lot of you are doing quite technical projects on specific areas, but if you do go into those water industry careers where AI and data is going to become more important, do you think you're being prepared well enough?
Can I take that?
Please.
Because I am one of the students working with this kind of approaches, and I was sort of self-taught. Every time I see an ad from a water sector company saying data analyst for water projects or things like that, I still feel I do not have a full pack of skills that I am confident to go there. I think now that the new, let's say, part of the WIRE CDT has included some of the courses on that, I think the students will be more prepared. But I still think that there is a little bit more improvement need to be done. So we are more prepared and less scared to apply for this kind of positions. Because it's a big word with a lot of information that we need to absorb and be confident to reproduce in the industry without mistakes and with accurate results. So I believe there's still room for improvement.
Thank you, Penelope. I'll go to you, Kamal. So I really like a practical approach, right? So do you think we need to change the university offering then so that everyone is given the possibility to learn a bit about cybersecurity, to learn a little bit about data analysts, so that we have a basic knowledge at least of what this new brave world will look like?
Yes, I agree. I think it's better to expand the repertoire of knowledge, and it is about better industry engagement and input on the curriculum. So it's about regularly involving industry professionals in the design and review of courses to ensure it aligns with current and emerging industry needs. So this might include incorporating the latest technologies, best practices used in the field, and also building on points like Matthew was saying earlier about regulation and policy and how that works in this sector. So this could be, for example, through guest lectures, workshops, and industry-led case studies as well. So I think there is an onus on us as universities to take a step forward and make sure we are actively engaging with water sector organisations and vice versa. So I do think, for industry, it's not just about targeting water-focused programs. But if you want to draw AI people in, why not be proactive and just go to like generic computer science courses and offer challenges and case studies to those students to make them aware that the water industry is there. And I think the meaningful work, keep on coming back to that. I think people are more drawn to that it is something important and fundamental that hopefully people will buy into. I also think, there's the technical skills we've talked about, and I'll just come back to the other sort of people-focused skills that are important as well. So we need practical skills in things like project management, as well as technical things like hydrological modelling. But for example, innovation is something that we're working on in WIRE, CDT, and innovation skills. And I think this taps into the flexibility that was being mentioned before by Elouise and Fiona. I think in terms of the workforce isn't just, you're good at that particular thing, but it's that ability to be adaptable and be innovative in different contexts and with different challenges. So that's something that's generic that can be carried across different roles, different jobs, even different sectors as well. And so we need to be making sure we're embedding that in that flexibility in the curriculum. It's about how to adapt, how to communicate well with others, how to manage things, as well as the technical skills that we've been talking about. And innovation is a big part of that, because things change. We are always going to need to innovate. And how do we innovate from coming up with creative ideas to then putting them into practice and scaling them up to work as well?
Thank you, Kamal.
Okay, yeah, we've had an interesting comment come through around graduate programs, and so maybe this one could go towards Elouise and Hugh, because I'm sure that you have graduate schemes within your organisations. So the comments come through basically suggesting that graduate schemes are generally a good thing, but perhaps they're not big and broad enough. So perhaps the scale of them is not where it needs to be. But also there's a perception that perhaps those that go through those graduate schemes end up as people managers, and perhaps those that want to have a more technical focus are are perhaps lost within that. So could there be better routes through for those that want to progress their career, but more on the technical implementation side? Who wants to go, Hugh or Elouise?
I can go if you like, if that's okay, Elouise. I was just going to add something to the last discussion, actually, which is that I think with the digital AI side of things, one of the really important things is the mindset. You know, the fact is that the technology, the digital developments, they change really rapidly, and it's not a case of us getting people to a point and that will be okay and that will see them through their careers. More of a mindset about how you get the value out of data and how you get the value out of you know, AI and machine learning, and how, you know, how that will yield efficiencies or improvements. So I just wanted to kind of make that point that you know, and I think in academia, you know, the PhD students and MSc students and graduates, they're really well placed, you know, to work with big data, but just keeping that mindset of how you get the value from it. Going back to the original question though, Pete, in terms of graduate schemes, I think that the question was how you encourage people to sort of choose the right career path for them, and not sort of almost get maybe sort of funneled towards you know, people management and sort of move out of that area. Within AtkinsRéalis, we have kind of 4, you know, distinct career paths, and one of those is a technical career path. And so as people move through their graduate training and they start to get a feel for where their strengths are and where their you know, main aspirations are, then they can choose that, you know, effectively. I mean, I stayed on a career path, you know, sort of all my career, because I like it. That's what I do. I enjoy solving those technical problems, and I had no aspiration to move towards you know, line management or you know, project management. And that's, I think any organisation you know, would be well served to, you know, sort of play to their staff strengths and encourage those strengths and you know, develop them.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I think just to add to that is there's also an element of reward here, that historically we've tended to reward roles with people management and sort of, you know, they score higher. I think, you know, making, just to pick up what Hugh said there about technical routes being attractive to people, that's really important. So it is really important that, you know, the HR functions in these organizations are looking carefully at how we make sure senior or deep specialism technical roles are rewarded, which is something important to us. I think just to speak to the grad roles specifically, for us, you know, obviously we do the grad roles where we take people on their placement, but more recently, our graduate schemes in asset have been much more structured with that rotation throughout a whole range of, you know, engineering kind of functions and work, you know, and I think that is creating a lot of interest and actually helping the individuals participating be exposed in quite a structured way to very different areas of work practice. And I think when you're taking on someone early careers, part of your really good stewardship to help them through their career is to expose them to different people, different activities and different ways of doing things. I think we make a mistake and look in too narrow a way if we push people into one space. I also think that one of the things that we're doing, and I'm sure it's very similar for Hugh, is that we actually say that, you know, particularly for our under 35 age group, we want to create better general networks and communities of practice. So regardless of whether you've come on a technical apprenticeship, you're doing a degree apprenticeship, or you're doing a graduate level, actually people are still at that point in their careers where it's full of options and opportunities. And those connections, that highly human part of relationships and curiosity and understanding what other people do, tends to work quite well when you create peer groups. So I do think, you know, the pastoral side of people's early careers is definitely something we're focusing on a lot more in this AMP period.
Mm-hmm. Kamal, anything to add? Oh, okay.
No, I think I'd just sort of reinforce that, is understanding people's needs, and I like the tailoring, you know, the idea of tailoring pathways. You know, if you want to keep people in, it is about motivating them and finding what fires them up and inspires them, that route that they want to follow, and making sure that capability is there, because it is quite easy to move people into roles that they're not particularly excited by, but just needs filling. So yeah, another way to keep people in is keep them, as we say, intrinsically motivated. So that is giving them choice, over what they look at, and giving them training and skills and support to develop that area.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Hugh, I'll go back to you with a question about the consultancies. Usually consultancies bring in innovation, special expertise to the sector, but sometimes these key competencies remain a bit outside the utility sector. So do you think this model is sustainable, or what can we do to improve this?
If I'm understanding correctly, you mean, is there a risk that the kind of, some innovations that are developed within consultancies, that they don't reside within the client organizations? Is that the question?
Yeah, correct.
Right. Okay. I mean, I think that a lot of the way, for a lot of our work into the water sector with clients, it's very much, we operate in alliances, frameworks. There's a lot of collaboration, and there are, for example, quite often, alliances which involve, client as a partner and consultancies and contractors. So I think that certainly for a lot of the larger programs we work in, those innovations, those ideas, those developments, those efficiencies, they are kind of, sort of shared within that entire alliance and externally. So I suspect it's not as much of an issue. Clearly we develop our own approaches to solving problems, and in some cases those might be, the sort of intellectual property of us as a business, because we can deliver our services in a more efficient way. But if there are good ideas and innovations that are developed in-house, then those are shared with our clients, because effectively they're procuring our services. So my gut feel is there isn't too much that's sort of just ring fenced off and hidden behind closed doors. Would be my sort of opinion on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, just to remind colleagues, if you have any sort of last questions, now's your chance to put those into the chat, because we're probably going to have 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll draw the session to a close. Just while we're waiting for any of those questions to come through, got maybe a slightly controversial one around pay. So a number of times people have suggested that pay is not necessarily the key driver for colleagues going into the sector, but how true is that when people are choosing, and perhaps that there are people that we might want to attract that aren't attracted. Again, keen to hear from our student voices around the importance of sort of salary. There is a little bit of a perception that the water sector doesn't pay as well as other engineering type areas. So yeah, who wants to start that one?
I'm happy to lead on that first. Just from, I mean, coming into the water sector originally from start by my masters, one of the reasons why I moved into water was what I felt like was perceived job security. So I felt like my background was predominantly hydrogeology and geology originally, and I felt like water, like everyone's always going to need water, right? There's no way away from that. Whereas if you're training initially maybe in, say, the oil and gas fields or the mineral fields, your job security is maybe a little bit more volatile, let's say. In terms of pay, I think for me personally, the massive thing is work-life balance, and that interesting to see so many other students agree with me. I want to echo some of the things that Kamala said, that I want to feel associated with the company that I'm working for. I want to feel a part of it. I want to be proud of the work I'm doing. If I'm going to be working for however many hours of my life for the rest of my life, I want to be proud of what I'm doing to some extent, right? But I'm not sure maybe that aligns with some of the problems that the water industry might face in the future. In terms of data, like just anecdotally, I've got 2 friends. One of them is a data scientist who works for startups and earns probably, I would assume, double what he could possibly earn in the water sector. I'm not sure that financing and competitiveness is going to be equivalent to what some of those really good data scientists might be able to get in, say, the tech industry, and you'll maybe more be looking at people like me or other maybe like hydrologists or hydrogeologists with more of a data focused background who are looking to upskill and adapt and to improve their repertoire. And I wonder if pay isn't so much of a problem for people like me, because we want to feel what we do is important and be able to do it properly, I guess, do it with a level of confidence, so to speak.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments to this one?
Yeah, if I could add in something. Yeah, I come from a computer science background, so I didn't really ever consider working in the water sector. Out of uni, I went to work at a tech consultancy, working in telecoms. And the reason I switched to, well, the reason why I applied to Wire was because I wanted a more fulfilling, a job I felt was actually making a difference in the world. And yeah, I mean, the PhD was obviously a pay cut. If you're doing a PhD, you're not doing it for the money. But the outlook afterwards, I feel like it is more of a positive. It's like good for the world, right? Working in water or working in like environmental sciences, which is what a lot of people seem to, as a result of the survey, seem to be interested in as well. So yeah, just to echo what Matt said, and a bunch of other panelists, Kamal, have said, yeah.
Thank you. What about you, Stephen, in terms of your experience, because you're obviously working across multiple utility sectors?
Yeah, I guess I think it comes back to the points made earlier about is it that feeling of societal contribution and the likes. I've never I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's what there are policies associated with individual organisations that we're aware of, in terms of their pay policy, and is it set at market rates? Is it plus I suppose of what market rates are, so therefore beyond kind of what they would expect in perhaps other industries. But I think we're always going to be challenged in the water sector with competing sectors that are always going to pay more, and therefore I think it's got to be a little bit more about because ultimately pay is a hygiene factor, right? And if you don't achieve that base level of pay, then people often say, well, look, if it's not going to get me X amount, then I'm not even going to look at it. So therefore they'll move on. So I don't think perhaps we should be competing on pay, because ultimately, we've and the industry is regulated as well. So there's certain restrictions in terms of what can be paid. So therefore, what the regulator will allow based on what prices the public will pay. So it is there's a bigger narrative which sits around this, which present restrictions, and therefore you can't get around that. So I think we perhaps need to think slightly differently about that employee value proposition, and being much more accurate based on appealing to hearts and minds, as opposed to just what goes in the bank at the end of the day. So I think it's just a different way of looking at it, and feeling like you're part of a bigger story.
Thank you. Any other comments on that point before we move on? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, so I'll do one more question, and then Samuela will do the final question for the panel. The discussion to date, so we've had a question come through from the audience. The discussion to date has been around more conventional routes in terms of graduate routes into the sector. How important do you feel that perhaps more practical ground up routes are, in terms of, I don't know, for example, part-time attendance on MSc courses for people already working within the sector are, and how do we better support and encourage that, for example, flexibility of study, how they access in terms of attendance, online, in person, etc. So be interested to hear your comments on that. And maybe Fiona, I guess this is a CPD type matter. Do you think that could be done better, more efficiently?
So for us, because we're a professional body, we can't control what organisations do in terms of how they release their people. But certainly for us, what we notice is that in terms of just those general CPD type activities, there is a difference in terms of how companies approach that, and in terms of effectively whether they will release people to attend, either to attend things or to log on to things, and even simple things in terms of what's their policy around if you log on to something in your work time, do you get it back? Is it seen as actually an active contributor to your development? So it will vary, and I think there is a change in terms of how people perceive that. Again, particularly that early careers group, who they will feel that actually there should be an integral part of their day job, so it should be part of their working hours. And that's a very different approach in terms of, say, lunch and learn, where it's an expectation that you do it effectively within your own time. So that would be a challenge back, I guess, in terms of, do we need to rethink how we account for the time and give and release people to take part in their CPD activities, whether that's through a part-time academic qualification or through going to industry events.
Thank you. Yeah, Kamal, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just want to add, as universities, I think we need to be more flexible and get away from having lots of people in a lecture theatre, if they're full-time courses. I think we need to be more flexible in the modes. I think COVID was a really steep learning point for us in terms of how we could engage in online learning and part-time learning, and we need to sort of follow through on those lessons to make the learning more accessible and flexible for the people who need it. So yeah, I think there's an onus on us as universities to be more innovative and be more adaptable in our learning offerings.
Thank you. Okay, Samuela, I think you're going to do the last question.
Yeah, I have a final question about retaining talent, right? We talked a lot about attracting talent, but are we doing enough to retain talent within the sector? What do you think? Stephen.
I think we're having a really good bash at it. I think we're having a good go at it, but I don't think we're perhaps as effective as we possibly can be. I often talk to member organisations about attracting diverse talent, and we all know that there is a lack of diversity in industry, and that's based on historical kind of recruitment trends, but just how people are attracted to industry, because it's perhaps been perceived as a more male orientated industry, and therefore which is incorrect, and we are changing that. But because people stay in industry for so long, it actually takes quite a long time to change that. So until we go through this perhaps anticipated change of the workforce over the next kind of 10 years, whereby we're seeing higher perhaps retirement rates than we have done previously, that's an opportunity for change. But when we do bring people in, I think we need to be consciously thinking about where we deploy those people then within the organization. So thinking about if we have one protected characteristic in one part of the business across one part of the country, and then we have another one somewhere else, well, actually thinking about how we position those people, and maybe when they come in they are still a lone voice in that protected characteristic, and therefore perhaps thinking about how we put those people together to be able to build a network and put in them, I'm not talking geographically, but maybe within some of those networks, but also thinking about how we when we don't take people on within the industry through a recruitment process, we think about how perhaps we refer them on to other organisations. So I mentioned earlier something called a talent pool in a system which we run, Energy and Utility Careers and Jobs, and we're actually doing some further configuration on that, which looks at how do we, if you go through an interview process, you don't get the job and then you get deferred and you get pointed towards this website. So therefore, organisations which are seeking similar talent, and knowing that you would have gone through quite a stringent recruitment process already, we've already got a good understanding of the skills which you have and how you can contribute to that workforce. So therefore, retaining that workforce within our industry. I think the other thing to consider as well is when we talk about moving people around or thinking about, bringing people in from ex-forces or, ex-offenders and the likes, and we think about kind of retaining those, we should also consider that pipeline of talent that is coming in, which is new, because unless we top up that hopper and get new people coming into industry, we simply will not be able to sustain the ambitions, certainly for the next asset management period. But let's think, we need to be thinking beyond that as well. And there are other infrastructure projects which are looking for the same talent. So yes, we need to keep people within the industry, but I also think that how we bring people in and how we make the sector much more attractive is both equally important. Back to my point about the energy and utility careers and jobs, I would like to see that anyone that did apply for a job, perhaps in the water industry, to get a job in the water industry, even if it wasn't with the first organisation that they applied for. So therefore, we don't lose those skills to other industries.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And Elouise, I know you have to leave soon, so do you have any final remarks that you want to make?
I think just on the talent retention piece, I think it's also looking at people. People are working longer if we can make the jobs right as well, but we also don't want people sat in roles, so we sometimes lose talent because there isn't the career progression for them. So blending up both of those factors is really important in terms of the longer workforce planning and talent strategy management for any, not just within our sector and beyond. So I think, there's that, and that's absolutely something we're trying to do with, keeping retirees engaged and contributing and benefiting from that talent and expertise, but also whilst bringing sort of opportunities in. I think for us as well, one of the key things is you retain talent when you keep them interested. That can be more in the way of lateral moves. A huge proportion of our appointments in the last 12 months, and we track whether people are moving within their department across to other departments or directorates, or new recruits to the business. We're always really interested to track that, and what we have seen is that more than ever before, we're seeing a much more diverse base of existing colleagues moving into quite different roles. And that's coupled with, and absolutely something that Stephen was talking about there, we're trying to remove requirements of, water industry expertise and things like that, reference to this legacy references on jobs or the suggestion of that within the HR function. We've recruited from areas like, recent philosophy grads going into employee relations space. That would have been unheard of a few years ago. People would have said, well, no, you need to come from an HR background. That applies all over. So I think how we look at the talent we bring in, if we bring in people who are already pivoting and looking at things differently, they're more likely to do that, and ultimately people stay with businesses that they feel care about them, that belong. Health and well-being and how that's catered for is absolutely huge for people. We talked about what matters. People want to know employees will be there when it matters, and I don't think you can underestimate that. We've lost talent to other businesses, but we've maintained really good relationships with them. There's quite a number of times when they end up coming back to us further in their career. So I think there is a bit of that long-term planning and accepting that actually, the sector is pretty collaborative, that, and regionally we're also very collaborative as well, that actually this isn't just a tiny jigsaw puzzle we're playing on. There's something far broader, and that really should inform our people and our talent strategies.
Thank you, Liz. Any other comment from the panel? You.
Just a quick one from me. I think my observation, and this isn't backed up with any sort of research or statistics, is that they're retaining talent in the water sector doesn't seem as much of a challenge. I'm not seeing, kind of vast sort of migrations out of water into, for example, oil and gas. And I think there probably was more of that, a few years ago. But I think picking up on Stephen's point, it's retaining the talent is not enough. So I think that for kind of bringing new people in is a bigger part of the challenge. And yeah, absolutely, people move within companies within the sector, and so retaining staff within an individual organization is always a challenge. And I would echo Elouise's point there. It's there's so much around making employees feel part of part of family, being cared about, that kind of culture of the organization. That's come on enormously in the last sort of maybe 5-10 years. But yeah, I think the real challenge is we know we need these extra skills coming in, and what was the term you used, Stephen? Feeding the hopper, filling the hopper. That's really important, and that I think is one of our main focuses at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final remarks? Okay, if not, I think that concludes the discussion and the session of today. I would like to thank you all for your contributions, for your presentations, and thank you to our attendees for your very engaged discussion as well in the chat. I think we can all agree that the water sector where we are working today is not the sector that was yesterday, will not be the sector that is tomorrow. So it's changing very fastly, and we need curiosity, we need resilience, we need adaptability, and we need skills to address all these changes. I think programs like this, like the linking between academia and practice that Cranfield always does, is absolutely crucial. So we really need to make sure we work on those challenges, and I don't think that is an option, right? Again, thank you so much for your contribution. I'll hand over to Pete for the wrap up.
Great, thank you, Samuela. Yeah, so just to reiterate some of those points that Samuela's made and our panelists have made, it's been a really interesting discussion. The point's been made that it's a really interesting and quite exciting time in the sector, and so we should be trying to sell those positive messages to potential employees in terms of keeping staff retention as well. So having those positive messages about what's being done. I know a number of the presenters have already spoken about that, but I think that's the way by which we develop a kind of a positive environment for people to want to work and stay within the sector. So I would just like to again thank all of the speakers, the panel members, as well as Samuela for ably hosting the event. It's been a really interesting discussion. Thank you for your audience engagement. We have recorded the session, so all delegates will be able to have a copy of the recording. And other than that, I'd like to say thank you, and we'll be having this again the same time next year. Not sure yet what the topic will be, but if colleagues in the audience have any ideas, then please do not hesitate to contact with those. But otherwise, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.